Here we go again then. Welcome back everyone. Jack Reeve, TalkNorwichCity. How are we all doing? Are we all excited? Are we all delighted that we picked up a point on Wednesday night at Hillsborough? I must say, it was a nice feeling to score a goal, and a goal that mattered, not Jovan McCarmer against Wrexham in the 92nd minute. A goal that actually I felt something. That's been a long while since I can say that, and how sad that I'm saying that as well. But that strike from Matthias Chris-Gordon hitting the back of the net was a brief moment of happiness in what has been a permanently gloomy season for Norwich City. This has been an absolute slog. A slog like no other. Look, I've covered Norwich City in the Premier League multiple times when we don't win in 10, don't win in 11, but it's a bit different then because you're coming up against Manchester City and Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea. There is an expectation that Norwich City will lose far more games than they win when you're in the top tier. Doesn't make any much easier, but it's different. When you're facing up against Leicester, Sheffield Wednesday, Bristol City, Derby County, and I'm sat here going, I don't see how we get anything, that's tiring. That's really tiring. And what's even more tiring is I feel like there's a route out of this. I feel like there is a position that we can take, that we can actively choose in order to change our destiny. And the fact that we're, at this stage, not acting, not doing anything, we are actively choosing to be in this position. I'm constantly dipping between, is Liam Manning being let down by the players? Are the players being let down by Liam Manning? And I think it's a seesaw that kind of goes either way at times. And, you know, I see Oscar Schwartau missing sitters. I see Josh Sargent one-on-one and not hitting the target. And I go, that's unlucky on Liam Manning. He got, you know, you can't do much more than get them in a system that provides chances and then hope that your players are good enough to take them. With Oscar Schwartau, I mean, you know, 19 years old. I think he's played 52 times now for Norwich City and has scored twice in that time. And with Oscar, I'm like, this is kind of what happens when you sign projects. All right, and it's not just Oscar. It's Mate Jurisic, it's Santi Sinats, it's Mankel Forsen. There are good players in there. With Mate Jurisic, I'm not so sure, but there are good players in there. But you can't be relying on them to be the ones that win you matches. Maybe you can in a couple of years, but you have to have that balance of experienced players that can do it now and the up-and-coming 19-year-old Oscar Schwartaus that might be worth 20 million quid in a couple of years. I like Oscar a lot, but for the last couple of games, arguably, if he tucks away a couple of his chances, which he should be expected to take at least one of those per game, you might have won the last two and things look slightly different. But that ultimately comes back to Ben Napper. And whenever I try and go, maybe it's the players here. And look, they have to take some responsibility. There's no doubt about that. But my arguments keep coming back to Ben Napper and Liam Manning. It's simply inexcusable what's going on at the moment. And look, I'll be honest, I'm bored of saying this. I'm really bored of saying the same things week in, week out. We are at the 7th of November. Norwich City's last 3 points came in August. That was that 2-0 win away at Blackburn. The rut has been 3 months long. And, you know, it's a new manager. And I agree, you can't keep chopping and changing. We've had a lot of managers since, 2020. Daniel Farker, Dean Smith, David Wagner, Johannes Torup, and now Liam Manning. But there is a world where, was it the sunken cost fallacy or something like that, where you invest so much into an era, and I talk about this era more as the kind of Ben Napper tenure. And if you're Mark Atanasio and you've chucked 70 million quid at this, you want some form of consistency throughout your kind of managerial structure and board level, because you've invested so much time and money and patience that surely at some point it must work. Surely it will turn. Wrong. This is too far gone. we've seen it so many times, not just as Norwich fans, but football in general. Once you lose the fan base, game over. And this is, and I genuinely believe, this is a very patient fan base. We have had a lot of disappointment over the last 5 years. And look, there are clubs far worse off. And actually, that's the slightly amusing / sadistic thing about this league at the moment is it feels like every single week we're playing a team in crisis. Leicester, no different really. This is a team that won the Premier League not so long ago, and are now, potentially facing possible points deductions, financial issues, mid-table in the Championship, team that seemingly don't want to be playing for their gaffer. Their recent form isn't looking too sharp without a win in 5. So I was reading Ewan Roberts' piece on the Pinkin, and he was saying that again, this is a good opportunity for Norwich to try and find something. But that was the same story on Wednesday against Sheffield Wednesday, and that was the same story against Swansea, who wanted their manager out. That was the same story against Derby, who hadn't won at home all season. That was the same story against Bristol City, who had so many players out injured. That was the same story against Ipswich Town, who hadn't won the East Anglian Derby in 16 years and struggled a little bit under Kieran McKenna. That was the same story against West Brom, who are looking to now sack their manager after a poor run of form. That was the same story against Wrexham, who were really struggling to adapt to life in the Championship. That was also the same story against Southampton, who've now sacked Will Still, and Middlesbrough, who've maybe not done so well in the last few games. And, well, that was also the same story against Millwall on opening day. We've had so many opportunities to find something, to kick on. And Ewan said it in his piece, and I think it was Darren Huckabee that said it as well. It's almost impressive to lose 7 consecutive home games, because surely at some point, just through the law of averages, you stumble a ball into the back of the net, you nick a point here and there. I mean, I've watched some absolutely awful Norwich teams in the 20 odd years I've been supporting this club, and I've never seen us go on a run this bad. I think there's only been 3 teams in the EFL since 1970 that have lost their first 6 league games. That's discounting the cup game in there as well. So we are in a world of historically awful football teams. And I think that's just about setting in for me now, just how bad we are. I look at that Ipswich Town team that got relegated. When was that? 2019. They were on more points than us at this stage in the season. I look at some Rotherham teams that when you could come up against in the Championship in years gone by, you go, how are they in this division? Right? They lack so much quality. All of those teams were above us at this stage in the season. So the severity of this can't be missed. And at the moment, it feels like it is. And I'm still at the point of anger. I'm really angry about the wastage in finances, because Norwich haven't been in this position before where they've had money to spend. I'm angry at Liam Manning for his arrogance in press conferences, and I still like him as a bloke, but that attitude in press conferences is starting to annoy me. I'm annoyed at some of these players for just consistently under-delivering. And I'm annoyed that we're in this position, and it's not an easy fix. But you have to start somewhere. I think when there's these big decisions in life, in work, in sport, it's difficult to... sometimes it's easy just not do anything because you don't know where to start, but you just have to start. You have to start making the change. And, are we going to be able to sack Manning, Napper, Webber, Neil Adams all at once? Probably not. But you can start at one of those points, and I think that point is Liam Manning. I think you sack him first. And this is where it gets difficult, because then who hires the next head coach if you're not trusting Ben Napper? Well, that's up to Mark Atanasio, and I'm sure he's got people and advisors that might be helping him with that. But the absolute priority at this stage is just survival. Just survive at this stage. Stay in the Championship and then look to rebuild over the summer. Plus, you've got January. I saw some Oxford and Portsmouth fans on Twitter going, they're worried because they've got Sheffield United and us below them, and they assume that just through sheer kind of financial power in the Championship, we will be able to change things up and hopefully go on a little bit of a run. And that is possible. But when I see the types of performances that I'm seeing on Wednesday and, well, actually all season, survival is not an option. Survival is an option if you change things now and you give yourself enough time in the season. But, I look at that run after the international break. Birmingham, Oxford, QPR, Watford, Sheffield United, Southampton, Preston. There's some good opportunities to pick up points there. And if you win 3 of those 6, things start to look much healthier. And that is very doable. You've got Oxford, QPR and Southampton all at Carrow Road. Carrow Road used to be a fortress, right? A place where you would turn up and just expect to win. I know that's not the case anymore, but it's critical that we have to get to that point. And I don't think I've ever seen a fan base, a Norwich City fan base, so unified on one opinion, and that is the sacking of the head coach and the sporting director. Never before. I've called for head coaches before. Daniel Farker, David Wagner, Dean Smith at points. And there's always been like a 50-50 split. Some people agreeing with me, some people disagreeing with me. This time, good luck finding anyone out there that isn't a direct relation of Liam Manning, and I suspect even those guys would want him sacked just to put him out of his misery at this stage. We have to start somewhere. We have to make change. It's not going to be for this game, but hopefully it will be after this game. And I also don't want to hear, and well, you think what you want at this stage. I don't want to hear anyone going, I hope we lose because it means that Manning will be sacked. Wrong. Because I think on Wednesday night, even if we'd have lost that game, he wouldn't have been sacked. And actually, for the well-being of this football club and for the survival of this football club, we just need points on the board. We can't keep losing football matches. So I'm really glad we didn't lose on Wednesday because, even if we had have lost, he hadn't have gone and we would have just been a point worse off. We're in a tricky position. In my head, this was always the point in which, you get this game out of the way and Manning goes. I hope I'm not proven wrong, but who knows at this stage. Look, this is, again, a good opportunity to beat a side who are struggling desperately. I think I saw that Leicester will be assessing their head coach after this game to see whether he's the right man to go forwards. Obviously, a couple of former Norwich guys in there. They've got Oliver Skipp, haven't they, in the middle of the park. They've got... some good players in there, but this is a league this season full of clubs in crisis. Let's just hope we're not the worst one. You see there the last starting 11. Obviously we're not going to have Jeffrey Schlupp. He pulled up with a hamstring. I would very much doubt the starting of Shane Duffy. And what we need to see is even if they don't believe it deep down, we need to see a team fighting for their manager and their manager fighting for their team. Because at the moment, I'm not seeing that in either direction. And that's a real concern. Does it change on Saturday? Who knows? I don't think it does. And I don't think we get anything. But at this stage, it's delusion that will try and get me through until something is done about this and what is going on at Norwich City at the moment. Thanks to BetMate, as always. You can get involved in their pot. I actually won on Wednesday night against Sheffield Wednesday. The code is TNT-12. Head over to BetMate. There's a little search icon at the top. Type in TNT12. It's completely free to enter. And there is a guaranteed £100 pot for every Norwich City game where we preview the video. BetMate, loyal sponsors of Talk Norwich City. You guys love them. You have to be 18 plus. You have to gamble aware. Get involved. It's fantasy football. Guaranteed payouts, which is always great fun. That's BetMate. Links in the description or scan the QR code on screen. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.